Hi, it's Amy Jensen, Geriatric Care Manager and owner of Genson Geriatrics Management. Happy February. This month, it's a lot less of an interview and more of a public service announcement. Shortly after the new year, I landed in the ER and was admitted to our local hospital. I will jump ahead and tell you that I'm doing just fine. But it did give me pause to think, and it kind of prompted this take on this month's monthly spotlight series. I was not admitted for COVID related symptoms, but because of the pandemic regulations, I was all alone and I had to navigate the ER and my emotions by myself. So, February, as we often think, is the month of love and romance. And who better to address loving on than ourselves? When it comes to my work and clients, I frequently say it takes a crisis to force us into action. Well, after my own personal experience, I now see a crisis can happen at any age. And like I said, it gave me reason for pause. Self care does not need to be defined as a luxurious or indulgent activity. So, I'd like to take this opportunity to remind each of us that self care incorporates putting our physical and emotional needs first, above all else. All other things can wait, and making yourself a priority should not bring a sense of shame or guilt. Because after all, how can you take care of anyone else if you're not taking care of yourself? So, I wanted to offer some tips that worked for me. Now, I realize self care looks different in the event of an emergency, it looks different for everybody. But here are some things that worked for me when I was alone in the ER. Breathing exercises. They help me manage my stress and allotted for a little bit of relaxation. I kept going over and over a favorite quote of mine that tells us when you fill your mind with positive thoughts, things will begin to change. I had a go to person, someone I could trust and call on to let my dog out, move my car, bring me essentials. And let's face it, in this day and age, a cell phone charger is a lifeline. And I was able to appoint this as a point of contact so I could share with this person updates who could then turn around and share with family and friends of my choice. In the event of an emergency, you also have to remember to keep calm. Now, I realize that's easier said than done, but remember, staying calm does not mean you do not advocate for yourself. In these current times, our healthcare system, especially the ER, is overly taxed and frequently operating on a skeleton crew. While it's important to give the ER grace, it's not a green light to sit quietly in a corner and blend in. If your symptoms are worsening, you are your biggest advocate. And there is no greater act of self care than standing up for yourself. Well, not literally, of course, because you are in the ER after all, but stand up for yourself and use your voice. Also, if you find yourself in an emergency, I encourage you to know yourself. I keep saying, you are your biggest advocate. Know your medications, know your allergies, know your symptoms, and know your rights. As we discussed in episode 3 in November of last year with estate planning attorney Martin Yarnell, there are 3 documents that apply to each of us at any age: Advanced Healthcare Directive, Power of Attorney, and HIPAA release. Now, keep in mind, because that we're talking about an emergency here, if you're not physically able to bring the physical documents, not to worry, just alert somebody on the hospital staff that those documents are in place. And since we're talking about self care and love, it's not just about loving ourselves, but loving those around us and others in our lives. And that leads me to my role as a geriatric care manager because I I take on that role of caring for my clients. I am my client's voice when they cannot express what I've touched on in these above bullet points. When I enter the ER on an older adult's behalf, I'm armed with not only those three documents that Marty shared, but copies of their DNR, their pulse. I have copies of their insurance cards, lists of their current medications, information leading up to the reason for the ER visit. Because I care about my clients, I know my client's history and baseline, and I can share with the ER staff what impairments or limitations are new or out of character. I can share the older person's fears or quirks. Are they a difficult blood draw? Do they experience sundowners and I need to encourage that the lights are left on? Are there certain triggers that make the person combative? I am there as a calm and reassuring presence. If I learned anything from my recent experience, it's that the ER can be a lonely and scary place, especially when you are all alone. Nobody should feel frightened and alone, especially when physically feeling at their worst. But for those of us who are alert and oriented, we understand this is the current and hopefully short lived sign of the times. For those suffering from cognitive impairment, their fear and confusion can be exacerbated in the chaotic and unfamiliar environment of the ER. I take my role as a geriatric care manager very seriously, and it's my honor and privilege to help step in for you when you physically can't be there for your aging family member, whether it's in the event of an emergency or on a routine basis. And like I said in the beginning, as for me, I'm doing just fine. I'm grateful I had some of these tools to get me through my ordeal, and I am passing them along to you in the hopes that you can draw on them if you're faced with your own emergency. Until then, I wish you continued good health and love.